We are on our way to pick up tires.
Welcome back, guys. Welcome to the first of many in this new automotive series on my YouTube channel. I'm still going to be doing electrical work, but I have been doing so much automotive on my other social media platforms. I feel like it's only fair to provide long-form content for you guys. So here we go. Today we are going to be doing a 3.5-inch lift kit from Rough Country on the Bronco, as well as these 37 Nitto tires. When I was thinking of ideas for this project, of course I was thinking go big or go home. I will later regret that heavily, but it's already purchased, it already came in the mail, so I already got to do it. These are the tires. I had to get my mechanic's long bed to pick these up because 5 of them is ridiculous. They're ridiculously heavy as well, and they don't even have the rim in them yet, so I can only imagine how heavy they're going to be after that. So the plan was I wasn't going to do the lift initially. I was going to wait to do the lift because I have had so much going on in life and with work that I was just going to take these tires off that I have that are 33s, and I was just going to change them to the 37s. I felt like I had enough clearance, especially because my Bronco came with the Sasquatch package, which offers a 1-inch lift as a factory. But turns out it is not going to clear at all. So I started getting antsy and taking everything apart because at the end of the day, it was already on the lift. It was already up in the air. I might as well just do the freaking lift, right? So I got the help of my mechanic, Mark, and his employee, Roy. They helped me through this process so much. I cannot take full credit for this build. It was the first time I ever did a lift kit, so I definitely needed the help of some experts here. But so basically, I started off by removing the tires. I had already removed the skid plate and the bolts for the lower skid plate the day before, and Roy and Mark were working on unplugging the rack and the pinion. I don't know why it said to do that. I think it was just so that way if anything shifted in this entire process, it wouldn't damage anything inside. So while they did that, I worked on removing the tie rod end with a 21mm socket, and I had to break that loose. And then after that, I had to remove the ABS wire and brake line with a 10mm. And then after that, I had to remove the upper ball joint with an 18mm socket. Next was removing the lower sway bar nut. Removing all of this was a little bit difficult, especially with the sway bar. I was trying to keep the sway bar intact under the vehicle, but ended up having to remove it later like Roy said I was going to have to. But, you know, I'm a little bit stubborn and try not to. But so that was with a 21mm socket.
Are you thinking of the fucking the pinion? Yeah, they say they're disconnected.
Oh, you think it matters?
Next, I removed the lower strut bolts with an 18mm socket. Anyone looking to install a lift kit from Rough Country, I will say that their instruction manual is pretty decent and it is pretty straightforward.
The craziest part is I didn't even go look. I just took his word for it. So I went to Home Depot, got a brand new light, got new light bulbs, got new switches, literally was ready to completely redo the whole thing.
Okay, listen, in my defense, there was a brand new light bulb I put in there.
I walked up to him and I shook the light bulb.
I changed the bulb, but the bulb I put in.
I wasn't mad about it. I wasn't mad.
You were not mad.
Nope, I was fine with that.
But, my man card took it, but that's okay.
It's okay, we're here now.
I then removed the upper strut nuts with a 15mm socket, which if you're doing it in the Bronco, I don't know about a different vehicle, but it is definitely a little bit difficult to get any tool in there. It took me a minute to do that. Then you just saw me remove the axle nut, and now we were able to remove the strut from the vehicle. My camera actually fell, unfortunately, so I missed that part.
Almost lost the nail right there. I felt it bend.
So the instruction manual actually calls to add spacers onto these struts, but they gave me lifted struts, so it completely eliminated a lot of the work that I needed to do. So instead of having to do anything with that, I jumped right into removing the heat shield and then removing the upper control arm and replacing with the new upper control arm that Rough Country provided. And again, this was a little bit difficult getting inside that area with a socket or a wrench. I had to use a 21mm and a 24mm. I didn't fully tighten the control arm because This thing was not on the ground. You're supposed to wait until it's actually placed on the ground with the full weight, so that way it can do its full flex, and then you can tighten. This is what the lifted strut looks like. We needed the help of another hand, so that way we could get this thing inside. Again, we are not mechanics. Mark does body work, and I'm only comfortable with body work. I'm not a mechanic, so we actually brought the mechanic so that way he could show us how to properly install the strut. And then while they were doing that on the right hand side, I took off the tire on the left and started basically just repeating the entire process that I had already done. We also didn't have heavy enough jacks, so the mechanic brought down some Super Duty jacks and was able to help us readjust the position of the Bronco on the lift. On the upper control arm, we also had to add spacers, but that came with it, and we used that right before we installed the new one. I will say getting lifted struts actually saved us from having to remove the old rubber insulator and realigning it before removing and all of the things and adding a preloaded spacer. Like, it saved us a lot of freaking time. So I would recommend talking to somebody at Rough Country about that before just getting your lift, because it doesn't come with that off jump. They provided me with the lifted strut when I reached out to them.
Just hitting random shit on my arm now. Oh, look, it doesn't move.
Yeah, never tighten the other side up.
The right, wherever this actually needs to lay. Well, now we have. I thought you were moving.
So as you can see, when we were slightly tightening the upper control arm, I had to hold the 24mm in place while Mark moved the 21mm, because the area to reach your hands in under this wheel well in the Bronco is impossible.
Those are very tired now. Mark, tell her about them tires. They don't hook worth a shit for the first 50 miles. Oh, yeah. Don't go around anything fast. Right. Once you're out of
ditch.
I don't want you to get hurt.
Alright, lift this up. Put this in. The other one's like that. No, it's like that. Yeah. Yeah, what are you doing, man?
See?
I don't care.
All right, so next thing that we had to do, which was the most crucial part of this entire job, was actually support the diff. And the process of this is supporting the diff so we can remove the diff bracket and we can replace it with the new bracket that Rough Country provided us. It was with an 18 and a 21mm socket, and we removed the bolt from the pass side supporting the axle.
You got it?
And after that, we installed the new diff bracket using what hardware we already had. And then we installed 2 passenger side spacers between the diff and upper diff mount, and 1 passenger side spacer between the diff bushing and the diff mount. And they supplied those for us, and that's what I'm doing here. It was a little bit difficult because we actually had to drop the diff as we were keeping it supported, so that way the new bracket would match up with the actual bolts. It told me to mark the skid plate and cut it for clearance, and I actually didn't even have to do that, thankfully. And so this is us just retightening the new diff bracket. At this point, this was the most crucial part for the front portion of this lift kit install. And after this was completed, I just had to put everything back together in reverse. I will say that we had a little bit of an issue getting the sway bar back in, as well as some minor issues that go along with this. So what ended up happening is it was like 6 o'clock at night by the time we finished this portion of it, and we couldn't get the sway bar back in. So I told him that I'd come back tomorrow, and the first thing that I would do is dismount the sway bar from the actual body and just retighten tighten when I was done because we still had to get the strut in on the driver's side and it was late as hell.
You sure?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah. I said that too when I was young.
I do electrical work.
Then I have, you're good.
Well, I just got it in. Wasn't going in.
I told you I had to.
I had to cut Roy off because we already knew that he was going to say, I told you you had to take the sway bar out, which, yes, it didn't say in the instructions, so I was really trying not to take it out. But you were right, Roy. If you see this, I took the sway bar out and put it back in. And I believe it was 15 and an 18 millimeter socket. Don't quote me on that. I really don't remember. The sway bar actually wasn't as much of a pain in the ass as I thought it was going to be to remove. I just had to be able to get the arms back in on both sides, and then I was able to re-bolt just 4 bolts under the actual truck, which again, really not as bad as I thought it was going to be. All right, coming back strong with day 2. So I was able to put all this back together. I was just waiting on that back area sway bar so that way I could drop this back in and then retighten everything. And once I retightened everything, I was able to get the front 2 tires on. We were able to drop the lift and then reposition the jacks in the rear because now the rear installation came in, which was an even easier process. I will say the front probably took us about 4 to 5 hours and the rear took us about 2. So the installation instructions said 3 to 5 hours. I think that you have to be pretty knowledgeable with lift kits to get this done in 3 to 5 hours because I can promise you it took us more than that. And while they were repositioning the jacks and trying to figure out where they were going to put them, I installed the lower and upper skid plate. I really wanted to make sure that everything in the front was fully complete besides tightening the upper control arms. That way we had no loose bolts because I swear to God, if I end up driving this car down the road and something falls out, I'm going to be pissed I even installed this thing. All right, guys, let's get into the rear installation now. First things first, after removing the wheels, we are removing the track bar with a 24 millimeter socket. We supported the axle and removed the lower strut bolt with a 1 1/16 socket. I didn't show that here because you're going to see me do it on the other side of the truck, but this part came first. We also removed the ABS emergency wiring harness with an 8 millimeter, and we removed the inner fender clip so that way we could access this little area to remove the upper strut nuts using a 15 millimeter socket and removing the strut from the vehicle. If I thought that the front was hard to get to, the rear was even worse. This was the worst part about the entire job. Again, in this instruction manual for this specific lift kit, it says that we need to basically add a spacer to the strut, but we didn't need to do that because they were already loaded. 10 out of 10, rough country. Thank you for saving me some time here. We reinstalled the new rear strut and no spacers were needed. Getting those 15 millimeters back in was a bitch, but we did it. So while Mark was tightening up the upper bolts to the strut, I was actually holding the strut in place so it didn't slip out. That way we could then reinstall the lower strut bolts for this piece of strut and keep working.
Yes, work in progress, for sure, yes.
Might have to release some of that.
Yeah, you're going to have to jack it up.
Unless you want to push on it, I mean.
Yeah.
I'm ready. You gotta go more. What?
We did the passenger rear side. Now we're going to do the driver rear side. Let's go. All right, so after the strut was taken care of, now we had to remove the bolt from the brake line bracket, which is going to be with a 10mm socket. The whole idea for this is to actually reinstall the brake line bracket with a new additional mounting bracket that offsets it so it doesn't put any stress on the actual brake lines. This was pretty easy, self-explanatory. There were 2 brackets that we had to reinstall, and from there, we loosened the other track bar bolt so that way we could move this up and down so we could release it. And the whole idea was to install the new track bar drop bracket. The only thing that I didn't love about this bracket was that we had to make an actual hole to support the bracket. And it wasn't even about the hole, it was about where the hole was placed. It made it almost impossible. You're gonna see I actually got a wrench stuck inside of that while I was trying to tighten it. But so I placed the bracket and then I marked through the hole in the drop bracket so that way I could drill out in that place. And I also removed the plastic clip from the fender wall.
This is it right here. What in the fuck?
You gotta get the arm up above.
What do you mean?
Right?
Okay. Kids Bob ones. Okay. Alright, so I need a, maybe an impact?
Impact?
Yeah, because otherwise I'm going to be here for 10 years.
Yeah. Hold the back and zip it.
And then this is me installing the track bar to the drop bracket.
The space?
As you can see, I was not a fan of that new bolt that had to go in. I had to remove it and reinstall it to make sure that I didn't get it stuck that time inside because there was no clearance. And then I reinstalled the tires and we dropped the Bronco down on the ground. And once we did that, then we tightened the upper control arms in the front of the truck once it actually was on the ground. And now it's time to do the tires. Mason drew inside the tires his name so that way we could always remember when we installed these tires. And he doesn't know how to draw yet. He's 3. Anyway, and then they removed my rims off of the old tires and put them onto the new tires. Because I actually don't mind these rims. I'm going to change the color of the outer ring. But as far as the rim goes, like, I like it. And this is where all the problems happened. Because this 37-inch tire did not fit on the aftermarket bumper. And it didn't fit anywhere. So I ended up having to buy a bracket from Rough Country that not only adds support by linking to the door hinges, but it also creates a space outside so I can actually fit the 37, and my third brake light had to get extended, which was just another piece. I didn't film that because it was on a separate day, but I did do it, and it was not as enjoyable as I had anticipated. But it really doesn't look that bad. I thought it was going to look ugly, but I really didn't mind it. But this is what she looked like when we were all said and done. 37-inch Nitto tires with a 3.5-inch lift kit from Rough Country. This video is before I got the bracket installed and everything. And then I also added the Bronco logo. I love it.